Hello everyone! Today I'm going to talk about a movie I saw last week that's been on my mind ever since. I didn't go into it planning to review it, but I've got too many thoughts bouncing around my head to save it for what else I saw in August. I don't know how I feel about this movie. I can't say if I liked it or not, if it's good or not, if I would recommend it or not. The film is 1978's Cyclone, or El Cyclone, also known as Terror Storm, a Mexican horror film directed by Rene Cardona Jr. I don't remember if a viewer suggested it or YouTube recommended it, but the title, the thumbnail art, and the blurb I saw made it sound intriguing and like it might be right up my alley, so I was excited to check it out as soon as possible. A powerful cyclone or hurricane strikes, leaving widespread devastation on a popular island. A plane gets caught in the storm and crashes into the ocean, its survivors eventually meeting up with some fishermen who have abandoned ship and tourists on a tour boat that's been lost at sea. As they're stuck together on this crowded vessel hoping for rescue, food and drink begin to run out, leading them to consider desperate measures. That's code for cannibalism. Now you have an inkling what kind of movie this is, but really, Cyclone is a combination of genres. It's a weather disaster movie, a survival at sea movie, a shark movie, it's a thriller, a drama, it's got shocking content, and it's also got an unintentionally hilarious opening act. At least, that's how I felt watching it the first time. The movie's got some major shortcomings, although, to be fair, some of the issues arise from it being a foreign production with dubbed dialogue. Some of the acting seems terribly stiff or corny, but I really can't judge if it's just the people or the dubbing that makes it seem that way. If you've heard me rant about dubbing before, which I have done on several occasions, you know I am not a fan because, among other things, it alters the quality of the performance and the characterizations, often for the worse. As it is, many characters are either exaggerated or underdeveloped and robotic.
Miss, I want to speak to the captain immediately.
Please remain calm, Mr. Taylor. Fasten your seatbelt.
The dub isn't synced with the picture very well, which can be a distraction, and it seems to get worse the longer the movie goes on.
The only thing I care about is seeing my granddaughter safe and sound. My poor little Tirsa. She's just a child.
I'm sorry.
And then there's what's actually being said. It's not a brilliant script, there are some odd exchanges.
Are there a lot of sharks there, Linda?
Don't worry, Tirsa. They don't know how to fly.
And occasionally there's a weird repetition of lines. Either one person does it,
Thousands of dollars in the bottom of the sea. Thousands of dollars in the bottom of the sea. Thousands of dollars.
or person A says something and then person B basically repeats or rephrases their comment, and it's like, didn't they just say that?
When I finish studying, I'm going to study the sea.
Not cosmography?
Nah. I've decided I don't like the sky.
Then what?
The sea.
The current carried us away.
And where are we?
I don't know. The current carried us quite a few miles away.
And then there's this scene where I couldn't understand a word over the roaring water. The American stars of note are Arthur Kennedy and Carroll Baker. Neither one is at the peak of his or her career. I can just imagine Kennedy thinking to himself, I was in Lawrence of Arabia, darn it. I've got a Tony and a Golden Globe. But at least he doesn't get as undignified a shake as Carroll Baker, who plays the graceless part of the most annoying and most foolish person on the boat, a silly woman with a little dog. I don't know how eager either one was to be part of this movie. I did a little research, and Kennedy had fallen on hard times after his wife died in 1975, and he was in poor health. As for Baker, she had spent the last decade or so making horror films in Europe after she was blacklisted in Hollywood for suing her producer. So, for both, this may have been a case of, it's not the job I want, but I need it. Lionel Stander is the third American, not as big a name, and since his character seemed like it was written for Ernest Borgnine, to me, he became Discount Ernest Borgnine. The movie also has some rough editing, shots that linger too long, immediately followed by shots that are cut too abruptly, lighting continuity errors, unnecessary zooms. It's not so much that it's bad, it's just awkward. And then there was this one part where I got tricked by an optical illusion, and I made a joke to my mom about how it looks like this guy is wearing the boat's motor on his head, and then he moved, and I was like, oh, it really is his head! And that, on top of everything else, just tickled me so much that when the cyclone hits and we get a couple shots of palm trees that look like they're being shaken by hand, I lost it. I had a laughing fit. And for me, at that moment, the movie went from being kinda bad to hilariously awful. And honestly, it made me feel better about the whole thing. Okay, the quality's off, this is disappointing, but I'm gonna have a good time. It's gonna be fun, because I figured the rest of the movie would follow suit. And then, then the rest of the movie happened, and I was like, oh, it got better in terms of quality, but things take a very dark turn, which made me realize that my initial reaction was totally inappropriate. After its deceptively benign and even humdrum setup, this movie gets intense and extreme and graphic. And in a way, as a reflection of the times, this makes sense. Among the major cinematic trends of the 1970s were disaster movies, Jaws ripoffs, and exploitation flicks. And in its second half, Cyclone combines all three. The rest of this video is gonna have some spoilers. I can't not discuss spoilers here, so proceed at your own risk. Jaws was clearly an influence here, as the film uses a lot of shark POV shots to build up suspense and terror, but this film really goes in for shots of the shark with the person in its mouth. Now, I'm guessing it's a dummy or a bundle of clothes loaded with squibs, but still, it's a very bloody and suggestive shot. I give them credit for their pristine underwater photography, and also for their attempt to give the shark a theme, just like Jaws did. The music in this movie is kinda groovy at times. And when there's trouble coming, you get this theme. Which is cool and all, except it goes on for too long, it's too repetitive, and it gets old pretty fast. You hear this cue, and you know, oh, here it comes again. Okay, but things start to get really shocking when they kill Carroll Baker's little dog. And it's not just the fact that they kill it, but how, and the way they show it after, and what they do with it on camera. And just like that, a section of my audience has completely lost interest in this movie. I'm not going to show you any of the gross parts because I don't want to jeopardize my channel. Not that I want to show you any of this stuff anyway. It is clearly fake, the blood looks like red paint, but still, it's disgusting, it's a violent, vicious scene. Carroll Baker, or whoever is providing the voice for this character, lets out this chilling scream, and the prop they use in the following scene is alarmingly realistic. The whole thing was nastier than it needed to be, but it does send the message that these people are getting desperate. They've already eaten raw fish, and then after they'll be using dead human flesh as bait. That's another disgusting part, and it's the fact they show the cutting that's really shocking. And while other things in the movie may be iffy, the props and effects people put real effort in. There is a pregnant woman on the boat, of course there is, and she goes into labor and gives birth. birth, and in a weird and stressful sequence that was probably intended to convey a spirit of kumbaya, they pass the newborn baby around, everyone holding it for half a second and marveling while inspiring music plays. After what happened to the dog, my mom and I were half expecting someone to either chuck the baby overboard or take a bite out of it. And the doctor finally says, "I think the new parents would like to have their baby back now." You think? Good grief! I wouldn't trust any of these people. They've all got, like, insane eyes at this point, and they're starving, and here's... Things get really dreary, and then the inevitable comes. The group reluctantly voting in favor of cannibalism. And that part is gross, but not as gross as the dog, so I guess they did draw the line somewhere. It was still too much for some audiences, though. A censored version was released in Germany and Italy that was 17 minutes shorter, seriously minimizing the cannibalism. Comparatively speaking, though, that's not one of my issues with the movie. I find true accounts of survival cannibalism, emphasis on true, emphasis on survival, very interesting. The desperate circumstances that drive people to that point, the way they approach it, and how it affects them afterward. This is fiction, but it's still got the ethical and psychological impact, and that's actually a narrative element that draws me in. I don't want to see anything gross, too much detail, too much lurid visual, and I'm like, no, now you're just being disgusting. But the impact on the people, that is what I'm interested in. And I think that the movie actually did a fairly good job with that. And then the movie ends with a chaotic feeding frenzy. Not the humans feeding on each other, but the sharks. The survivors end up in the water clinging to driftwood. Luckily, 2 seaplanes are on the way, but whoops, the sharks get there first, and it is a mad rush to reach the planes before every single person gets yanked down to a bloody demise. It's a heck of a way to finish things off. And I hope you weren't too attached to any of these characters, because there are no touching death scenes, nothing. Just whoop, there goes one, whoop, there goes another one, whoop, there goes another, whoop, there goes another! While Cyclone may lack technical excellence and artistic nuance, it certainly has shock value, and to give credit where it's due, it turned out to be a gripping film. The props and effects were impressively grotesque, and there's one striking shot of an improvised sail that resembles the Grim Reaper, as if the lifeboat is headed down the river Styx to Hades. I don't know if that was intentional or just a happy accident. I'm curious how Cyclone would have fared if it were better edited, if they fixed the audio issues and recut certain sequences, and also if it had better dialogue. Would it be a more competent and praiseworthy film overall? I don't know. I don't know anything. I had hoped that talking about this movie would give me some clarity, that in the process I might at least be able to decide if I liked the movie or not. But I remain uncommitted, and there's no clear consensus in the comments on this movie on YouTube. People's opinions are all over the place. There are the ones who are like, oh, that was surprisingly really good. And then there are the people who are like, oh, this is trash. And then there's people who are like, oh, wow, there goes my lunch. So, I don't know. You'll have to watch it and make up your own mind. Or don't. I can totally understand if you'd rather skip it. I'm not necessarily recommending it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll come back next week when I'm sure I'll be talking about something much more wholesome. Thanks for watching.